It really didn't have to go this far. It really didn't. You think it's funny to have someone admitted just because they're comparing the 911 to the new GT63? I'm not crazy, you're crazy. But I've had a change of heart, slightly. This behind me is the new hybrid version of the GT63, the E-Performance. And I've realized two things after driving this a little bit. Firstly, the torque in this thing, it's just strong enough to get some of these straps loose, which is good. Secondly, I think AMG might be done making real deal, I'm doing the Trump thing, real deal sports cars. But let me explain. So the last time we reviewed the GT63, it was the standard 63 all-wheel drive version with 577 horsepower. Now we've got the 63E Performance, which is giving you 805 horsepower and 1,000 pound-feet of torque. But it also weighs more than an F90 M5, Lucid Air Pure, C63S E-Performance, Porsche Panamera GTS, Lexus IS 500, BMW M8 Competition, Dodge Challenger Hellcat, and a Tesla Model S Plaid. So what do I mean when I say that Mercedes isn't making sports cars anymore? Well, despite the fact that this car will hit 60 miles an hour as quick as a 911 Turbo and probably lap a track faster than any other AMG that doesn't have 1 or Black Series in the name, this isn't really a sports car, and Mercedes themselves will tell you that this E-Performance version specifically really sits in a category of its own. It's not quite a 911 or Vantage competitor, but it's also not a DB12 or Continental GT competitor either. This car really does have commitment issues. It can't commit to the GT side of things, and it can't really fully commit to the sports car side of things. It's somewhere in the middle. AMG's original philosophy was all about being a German muscle car, essentially. Big engines, brutal power, epic exhaust notes, a lot more centered around being a fun, primarily rear-wheel drive performance car. But the Mercedes we know today is a lot more tech forward. They're a lot more focused on technical prowess and being precise, as smooth brain compatible as possible. Sounds familiar, right? Sounds like another brand we might know of. The new 911, on the other hand, has a new trick up its sleeve that, to be honest, I feel like people are making a bigger deal out of than they need to be. This is a hybrid car, right? It uses an electric motor and a battery, but I feel like a lot of people wouldn't be able to notice if you didn't tell them. That's because unlike the GT63 or even the Corvette E-Ray that'll give you a couple miles of electric-only range, this is really more of an E-turbo car than a T-hybrid, as they're calling it. You're using an electric motor and a battery to basically help give you more torque down low and help the electronically powered turbo spool up quicker. And it really is an out-of-the-way setup. So there is no electric-only range, there is no EV mode startup, there's no stealth mode like you have in the E-Ray. This is the most out-of-the-way, least hybrid system you could possibly get in a sports car right now. And I think that's what Porsche knew that customers would want if there was going to be a hybrid badge slapped on a 911 of all cars. We're also using a new engine, 3.6 liter single turbo. The first time that the 911 has gone with a single turbo setup since it's gone turbocharged in the 991 era of cars. And like I said, I'll have a full review on this new GTS later this summer, but it is an interesting setup. And the sound, it's almost V8-like. So each car is taking a vastly different approach to hybrid technology, but to achieve the same result effectively. So now we gotta find out who's got the better 0 to 60. The AMG definitely has a higher power to weight ratio, and the torque figures on that car are insane. But the 911 with the rear engine setup should definitely be better at putting power down more effectively, especially in not the best road conditions. So this will be interesting. All right, it is 73 degrees. I got the tires pretty much warmed up. We are on Goodyear Eagle F1 tires, and we're working with about 532 horsepower. Let's see how well we do. I'm expecting a sub 3 second 0 to 60. I'm expecting that. Let's see what we do. All right, foot on the brake. Wow. Sorry, I know it's hella dark right now. I'm filming this at like 6 o'clock in the morning. But firstly, I want to say that hook was crazy. The way that hooked up was actually really good. But we didn't get the best time. We got a 3.15. I feel like we should be able to do a sub 3 for sure. Like, I feel like that's 100% possible. Let's run this back. I'm gonna try building boost for longer this time, see what that does. All right, just like the 765 review, I'm gonna just run this a bunch more times off camera and see if I can crack a sub 3. If not, then we move on, but dang, that kind of sucks.
1 day later.
Update, I ran the car elsewhere, and I managed to get a 2.83, 0 to 60. So, quicker than what Porsche says the car will do. I honestly believe on better tires and on a drag strip, we could probably crack a sub 2.6 potentially. This car is not slow. Definitely not slow. I like that number. All right, it is 76 degrees. We're on Michelin Pilot Sport 5Ss. Thank you, Mercedes, for always putting good tires on your press cars. I think we should get a sub 3 for sure. I'm not gonna spoil what I've already done on this car prior to getting here today, but I'm very confident we should get a sub 3. I think we've got all the right conditions for that. This is not a slow car at all. Let's do this. All right, just foot on the brake, foot on the throttle, let go. So that wasn't quite 0 to 60 in under 3, 3.1. I know this car can do better. I can promise you I know this car can do better. We're gonna run this back. Let's do this again. Oh, this car is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. All right, that was 0 to 60 in 2.78 seconds. Let me get a picture of this just for verification. 2.78 seconds. Got to put it out there. A couple of days ago, I ran this car elsewhere and got a 2.66. 2.66. On worse roads than this, which is kind of weird. But a 2.66, that makes this officially the quickest 0 to 60 car with an engine on the Cars with Miles leaderboard, the quickest launch control we've ever done in a car that wasn't fully electric. This car for sure has its flaws, but it is a torque monster, a torque monster. And when doing that launch control, you really do feel at 1,000 pound-feet. It's crazy. But I'm happy with the results we got either way. Well into the sub 3s consistently. This thing is a beast. And if you want to see how these cars' time stacked up against all the other cars I've done launch control on, I'll have my Cars with Miles 0 to 60 leaderboard in the description where you can check out all the other cars I've tested thus far, including some vehicles that I haven't actually shown on camera, but I've tested from 0 to 60. So both cars are using hybrid technology to make the cars faster, make acceleration more seamless, make it an easier car to drive. But who's actually got the more fun car to drive with all this hybrid tech caked in? Well, that's a complicated question to answer because I feel like they're both fun cars, but in different ways and for different reasons. The 911 compared to the GT63 is a lot more engaging, especially in the corners. It's a lot lighter. It'll wake you up in the morning when you're taking it down a nice twisty back road. It's a much more sporty feeling car. It's a car that makes you want to get out and have a spirited drive. The GT63 is fun in the same way that you'd have fun using a blunt force trauma device, if you're into that sort of thing. Even with the insane weight figures, the torque figures of this car are absolutely disgusting. You drop this thing into the right gear and the hybrid system decides to play nice, the acceleration is just otherworldly. It really is the closest thing you're gonna get to an EV in a gas-powered Mercedes. But the GT63 is so much more of a daily driver. The 911 is kind of darty and somewhat rough on the freeway. This is so much more relaxed and calm and composed. For road tripping, this is easily the better car to live with and do long-distance cruising in. But there is one thing that they've done to this E-Performance version of the GT63 that is totally unacceptable and makes this so much less of a daily driver. This is absolutely diabolical. This is like 60% of your trunk space now completely gone because of the hybrid battery assembly right here. You get this down here, and then this little baby shelf up here. No bueno, I don't like it. The non-hybrid GT63 is a genuinely practical hatchback GT car. The hatch in that car is really sizable. You can fit a bunch of stuff in there. The one you've got in this car is an absolute abomination. And if I was road tripping all the time, especially with a second person, I might not be able to consider this car for that reason alone, because you've got the battery taking up like 60% of the space you had in the non-hybrid version. And sure, you can store stuff in the back seats, but even still, this car is just so much less practical than the non-hybrid version, and really lessens the appeal having a hybrid system at all in this car. But aside from the practicality you're losing with this version, this is still a really great road tripping car. It's so easy to drive in long distances, and it's so much more livable in situations where you're not able to have fun in the car. The 911, when you're going down a back road, is amazing, but if you're stuck in stop-and-go traffic, it's not as nice to drive as something like this. This is where you get a little bit more of that GT experience. But is being a soft and smooth road tripper really the point of what's essentially AMG's flagship car? I mean, this is their only two-door coupe with an AMG V8, aside from the SL that this car shares a platform with. But, I mean, if I wanted to go just as fast and have an even more practical car, I could just get the four-door version of the AMG GT that also has a hybrid version that also is less practical than the non-hybrid version. But that car is going to be so much easier to live with. I have actual back seats I could fit people inside of. That's like a real deal GT. This is supposed to be the special sports car experience, right? That's why you would get the two-door versus the four-door. But I find myself feeling that you're not gaining much compared to having the four-door, which is infinitely more practical and just as fast. The 911 is special because it's the only way to get a rear-engine sports car, and one with a flat six engine and potentially a manual transmission and a 9,000 RPM naturally aspirated motor if you'd like. And that's why the 911 is a much more special, more experience-oriented car to drive, despite not being a better daily car for the road. But as far as how the GT63 and the GTS compare to each other specifically, it's really with the hybrid system. Porsche's execution of the hybrid system, it's a lot better. Quite honestly, Mercedes hasn't had the best go with performance hybrids. The AMG 1, their $3 million hypercar, that's known to be a slightly problematic car. Every single AMG hybrid I've tested on this channel, on camera and off camera, has had an issue of some kind, whether it be big or small, software or mechanical related. And to have that experience in every AMG hybrid I drive within a week of testing it, it's not a good sign. My biggest problem with the hybrid systems and all these AMGs is that it just doesn't have that seamlessness, that smoothness. You drive the Porsche and it really feels like a naturally aspirated car. You hop into this and it feels kind of like a boosted Subaru WRX that someone built in their garage over the course of a few months. It's very stagey, despite there being two forms of acceleration, one of them that's supposed to be immediate. It's also a kind of laggy car at times. And let me show you what I mean. I'm in first gear right now. Yes, you get a nice hybrid punch. From a standstill, it's nice. It feels seamless, smooth. But once you're already going, it just lacks that refinement, that seamlessness. It feels very stagey. It just doesn't have that smoothness. I feel like the perfect performance hybrid should feel naturally aspirated. And so there are points in time when this car just quite honestly doesn't feel that much faster than the non-hybrid version, simply because the hybrid system is so hit and miss as far as when it wants to kick in, especially when you're at speed. It just doesn't have that hybrid feel that I'm looking for and that the 911 has, and it does really well. Now, the Mercedes does a really good job at not feeling like it almost weighs 5,000 pounds in the corners. I'll give it that, but the 911 just actually doesn't almost weigh 5,000 pounds in the corners, and it turns out makes the cars feel noticeably different in the corners. Who would have thought? Porsche hasn't really changed much as far as handling suspension technology for the .2 generation of the 911, so it's just as awesome to drive as the last generation car or .1 generation car. Corners beautifully. The front end is still pretty lightweight despite having the battery towards the front of the car now. Steering feel so much better than the Mercedes, although the Mercedes isn't bad. Not being too heavy is one aspect, but balance is another. And simply put, Mercedes is never going to achieve 911 type agility with a front engine car. It's just never going to happen. So yes, of course, from a handling perspective, this is where the GTS really shows that it is, you know, a big 911, but a 911 nonetheless. Handling wise, this is definitely an interesting car, but driving it back to back with the 911, it's quite obvious that you're just never going to be able to beat the agility that you'll have in a car where the engine is behind you as opposed to in front of you. And at least with the previous generation GT, it was a front mid engine setup. This is just front engine setup, no more front mid. And so the balance, the front end is so much heavier on turn in. But even despite that, the car is honestly on rails, and it is the most all-wheel drive, like no rear wheel bias sort of feel to it until you put it in drift mode. All that weight is keeping you on the ground, combined with the sticky Michelin Pilot Sport 5S's. And of course, Mercedes rear axle steering actually helps the car take corners pretty well for how big and heavy this car is. It's just gonna lack that sports car agility because of the weight, because of the engine placement. But let me be clear, this car absolutely handles well. It's just not gonna handle like a 911 that weighs 1,000 pounds less and has the engine behind you. So with this hybrid version, I'm kind of like, what's the point, right? This is a hybrid, but you're only getting like 7 or 8 miles of EV-only range, so it's not offering the practicality that something like a BMW M5 at least has. You're losing a huge amount of trunk space. The car's so much heavier. The hybrid system is going to introduce all kinds of potential reliability issues, and that it's not going to be that much more fun of a car to drive from a dynamic standpoint when you consider how much heavier it is. And so why not just get the non-hybrid version, take it to a reliable tuner, and get the same amount of power, 800 horsepower, 700 or 800 pound-feet of torque that's actually going to be more usable all the time. The car's going to be 600 pounds lighter. The car's going to be a lot more reliable. If you're asking me which version of the car I'd just take the non-hybrid version, tune it up. Overall, I definitely like this car. There's many moments when I'm just in awe of the torque and the technical prowess, but there's a lot of things about it that just really don't make sense. And for how much this costs, you could either get a much better GT or a substantially better sports car. But there is one thing that this car can do that the 911 certainly can't, that is awesome, and that is drift mode. And drift mode is pretty cool. Every performance hybrid I've driven from AMG, from a technical standpoint, is very impressive, especially the single turbo 4-cylinder hybrids. There's a lot of really interesting stuff going on under the hood. But when it comes to actually driving them, despite the torque and certain moments feeling absolutely monstrous, absolutely explosive, it just doesn't feel complete. It feels unfinished, it feels unrefined, it feels unready for prime time. But I appreciate Mercedes for trying. They could have easily just made this the GT63s with 650 horsepower and rear-wheel drive and had it be just a 2-seater under 4,000 pounds. Wait a minute. Powertrain aside, I feel like driving this car doesn't really feel like a true sports car experience or a true GT experience. Like something like the BMW M8 is infinitely more practical and just as fast as the non-hybrid version, or this one in certain moments in time, depending on when the boost hits. This car confuses me because it weighs as much as a Panamera, but then you get inside and it has the interior roominess of a 911. And then you start driving it, and then it feels like a Panamera. And then you stop driving it and get out, and then it looks like a 911. The Mercedes AMG GT63s E-Performance 2-door coupe confuses me. It's also really, really expensive. This one is $224 as it sits, which, I mean, to be fair, this spec is absolutely banging. The blue on the gold wheels, chef's kiss. But this car doesn't even have all the most expensive options. It's absurdly priced even for a Mercedes. And that also makes it 30 grand more than the GTS we're also testing. How often do you see a Mercedes being compared to a 911 and the Mercedes costs more? That should tell you something. So I mean, you could spend the same money and get a V8 Vantage or a 911 GTS or Turbo and have a much more focused back road or Canyon Carver, or you could spend a little bit more and hop into something like the Bentley Continental GT, which is heavier, but is also insanely fast in a straight line and does the whole GT thing a lot better. So to call this either a Grand Tourer or a sports car, I don't think you can really do either one. It's really more of a sport tourer. This is the AMG GT You know what? I think I'm just gonna go readmit myself. See you guys later.